I recently saw a YouTube video where two men were supposedly reviewing my video that debunked the Duggar cult narrative. In the video on this channel entitled Duggar Cult Debunked, I laid out the 6 clear characteristics of a cult with an added 3 more characteristics that many of the more notorious cults also have. As I laid out these characteristics, I took each one and compared it to the Institute in Basic Life Principles, the organization the famous Duggar family participates in, and showed with evidence that this is not a cult, even though many people now use that as a buzzword to try to scandalize the organization.
This was her, she's summarizing what is a cult. Okay. So I'm just going to let her go through her list, and then I'm going to pause it so that we can deconstruct it a little bit.
Fantastic. Let's play this bad boy.
Number 1 was a charismatic leader. Number 2 was dictatorial control by that leader. 3 was isolation from family and friends that are not involved. 4, no tolerance for questions or criticism of cult practices. 5, unquestioned adherence to the leader's dictates. And 6, punishments for leaving the group or not adhering to dictates, such as shunning, isolation in some way, or even violence. Again, I'm not involved with IBLP, but I do believe they are a Christian organization and should not be slandered as they have been and are continuing to be online. I'm not going to point out all the evidence and all that debunks the Duggar cult narrative here again. You can see that video and find that information. But if you believe the Duggars are in a cult because of the propaganda you've seen in the media and online, I really do suggest you look up that video that shows specifics and goes through each point step by step. I'll put a link here, maybe above, and in the description. But I did want to talk about the arguments these two men had against what I presented. The first blaring problem with their supposed arguments is that they did not show my evidence of the comparison of an actual cult and its characteristics to IBLP as I did. In other words, they didn't even show my arguments. They simply showed the list I presented of what a cult is and then said IBLP is a cult and that it does do all the things that I had on the list. So they gave no argument to my comparisons. But they did say 3 things I wanted to address, which I will do in this video. The first is that they used the youth training centers sponsored by IBLP and their rules as their main argument that IBLP was a cult. They continually referred back to the training centers through the whole video.
Isolation from family and friends not involved is 100% true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got isolated at the compounds.
The problem with this is that training centers are not IBLP itself. They're similar to when you or I send our children to camp or to a private school. Youth camps, especially church youth camps, are usually run by a church denomination or a board of directors that is affiliated with one. The same goes for private Christian schools. IBLP was the sponsor of training centers around the country that had programs for young people to learn various skills, such as carpentry, office work, hospitality, cosmetology, public service, such as search and rescue, and more. And some of them were focused solely on spiritual growth. When a young person signs up to go to camp or their parents send them to a private school, they always have a code of conduct that is agreed to before they go. It generally has the rules and a dress code that the participant is expected to follow while they're there. If a person goes to one of these camps or to a school and breaks the rules and refuses to abide by the dress code, they're generally disciplined or sent home, depending on the infraction and its severity.
It happened all the time.
Right. They catch you doing something.
If they caught you doing something, against the rules, they would punish you, right? If it was a grievous enough infraction, you were out.
That is standard procedure for every camp and every private school that has ever been in existence. Does that mean my children were in a cult because they participated in youth camps or attended a private school? The same with the ATI homeschool program that was sponsored by IBLP. When someone signed up for the program, there were certain rules they agreed to abide by to be a part of that program. If they chose not to abide by those rules anymore, they simply stopped doing so and found another homeschool program. Additionally, when a person goes to a youth program, they are there for a certain amount of time. A program generally is set for a week, a few weeks, a few months, or even a couple of years. The school programs my children participated in were set up in 9-month increments. The camps my children attended were for a week each, except for Scout Camp, which was set for 10 days. Every one of them had rules. Every one of them had a code of conduct and a dress code. They all had a set period of time that the program would last, and they would then return home. These are not cults. When you enter a cult, you do not go to the compound for a set amount of time and do a certain program and then leave when the program is over. A cult is a lifelong commitment where you give your entire body, soul, and all your belongings to it and never plan to leave. So each one of the arguments these two men had were not in reality comparing the IBLP organization to a cult. They were comparing the IBLP youth programs and homeschool program to a cult and suggesting that because the facilities and programs had rules and a dress code, this made IBLP a cult. That because the youth were sent to those places for those programs and were not allowed to leave whenever they wanted, that this is an additional evidence that IBLP was a cult.
The boundaries thing. So
All we had was rules.
well, she said it was geographical boundaries. What do you call the compounds all over the country, all over the world?
They wanted us to go out and witness and blah. I was like, when, where, and how?
That was Bill Gothard's job. That was the basic seminar.
When we got to the training center, we were pretty much on lockdown to protect us from the world. There was very little, there were certain things here and there, but like their ministry was not going to the people that needed it. It was convincing people to come to them or convincing government to send them the people.
Yes.
And so I did not see very little witnessing or outreach, if you will.
But that argument does not hold up unless they also believe youth camps are little cults too, and private schools are cults, and Scouts is a cult, and etc. All these programs have rules and a dress code too. Parents may even choose to send their children to school or a camp they don't want to go to. Sometimes this happens. That doesn't make the facility or the organization a cult.
Just all you have to do is take your story or Lindsay's story and be like, did you want to be there? No. Would you had rather gone home and been with your family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the same argument almost all of the people who are online arguing that IBLP is a cult make. Many of them use their experience at the training centers and suggest that because there were rules and there was a dress code there, and sometimes their parents sent them there when they didn't really want to go, that IBLP was a cult. They suggest that because they were expected to stay on campus unless they had permission to leave, that they were on a cult compound. My children went to camps and were not allowed to leave the campgrounds anytime they wanted to. In fact, they had to attend the classes at camp, be at the cafeteria to eat with everyone else. They had to go to worship services, attend campfires, and go to bed with lights out on time, etc. When they entered the school, they could not just go off the school property without permission. They also couldn't have electronics, phones, and could not listen to any kind of music they wanted, wear anything they wanted, and etc. at school or at camp. Does that mean they were in a cult? Of course not. Those who were in the IBLP-sponsored training center programs were under the authority of the people who were charged with their care, and they would go home at the end of the program. That is standard and usual for all youth programs in any organization.
So we've got these 6 basic characteristics of a cult.
Right.
4, 5, and 6. Number 4, no tolerance for questions or criticism of cult practices. I would absolutely say that was our experience in the shiny, happy people.
The interesting thing about that is, while you never, I don't think that Bill Gothard ever mandated that, but his directors of all of the facilities, they just practiced that regardless. Like, you did not question
That was
the
default.
teachings. It was, yeah, exactly. It was
Absolutely not.
It didn't. He didn't have to say it.
Right.
It was just like, of course, if you say something other than what we believe, you're done.
Yeah, if-
Holly doesn't even realize, she's like, oh, every family could do this, blah, 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 different, blah, blah, blah. Does she not remember how we spoke that every training center was its own little kingdom with its own little special rules based on how the director, because there are directors that were absolutely dictators. We're talking showing favoritism to some people, treating other people like total crap. I was in one that was not...
A little more loosey-goosey.
Well, not loosey-goosey. They actually followed the letter of what Bill Gothard really, like, it was the example of what a training center should be like. There was almost, I don't know of any favoritism.
Okay.
There was also no fun.
Fair enough.
And it's like, oh, guess what, guys? We're going to watch this basic seminar again after dinner.
This is just like all youth programs everywhere operate. What they are trying to do is suggest that this kind of operation means they were victims and that IBLP is a cult. This is just untrue. The second point that they tried to make was in conjunction with the first one, that if a person or family did not abide by the teachings of IBLP, that they were ostracized from others who did. They compared that to the fact that those who were at the training centers were kicked out, or in other words, sent home, if they did not abide by the rules. They suggested that was another reason IBLP was a cult. The problem is that being ostracized from a group is a natural human nature thing. When any group has a set of beliefs and you are part of that group, including the group these two men have become associated with now, if you dissent from those beliefs, it is human nature to start to feel isolated from that group. That is because humans are tribal. We all connect with others who share our beliefs and values and create groups to associate with according to those things. So if a person starts to change their beliefs and begins to argue against what they previously believed, it's only human nature to feel outside the group.
And number 6 was punishment, which is hilarious to me, especially given Mommy Answer Lady's background. So punishment for leaving the group, not adhering to dictates. Okay, so here's the thing about leaving the group. Let's just address that first. If you left the shiny happy people cult, disavowed yourself from the shiny happy people cult, you no longer had friends within the shiny happy people cult.
And it's also human nature to find a new group that aligns with your new values and beliefs. These men associate with people who believe in atheism, transgenderism, anti-Christian bigotry, and leftism generally, and want to bash IBLP and Gothard. This is their belief system, and all those they regularly associate with generally adhere to it. If they were now to change those beliefs, or even admit that IBLP was not a cult, they would be ostracized from the friends they have now come to care about. They would start to feel disconnected from them. Does that mean they are now in a cult too? Does any group with any belief systems now qualify as a cult? Of course, they would not admit to that. But to associate with others who share your same beliefs and values does not a cult make. Individual churches and families handle themselves in different ways as to how they deal with differing beliefs and practices within their own groups. But IBLP itself has nothing to do with that and does not punish people who believe differently. IBLP is an organization that teaches certain Christian principles to live by according to the beliefs and values they hold. That is all it is. This does not constitute a cult. The third point I wanted to address is really a silly one, but since that particular video was trying to address my debunking of IBLP being a cult, I had to speak to it. Only one of these two men actually watched my video about the evidence and logic showing that IBLP is not a cult. The other one did not watch it. And I believe the one who did watch it does believe my points were true. He does not want to openly admit and completely concede that, though, because of the tribal mentality I just described. But I believe in his heart, he knows I'm right about it after seeing my arguments. So instead of just conceding, he makes another claim that is so outlandish I had to address it. Listen to his new claim.
Of course.
So I've watched these clips, and it's just insane. But then I realized I think I came to an agreement with Holly.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So what does she keep saying? She keeps saying that this is not a traditional cult, or this doesn't meet the tenets as she sees them of a traditional cult. It's like, all right, you're right, not a traditional cult. This is 2024, and there's all kinds of technology now that wasn't in the past. But I will propose this, that it is a MLM cult.
Oh,
It is a
pyramid scheme cult.
Because think about it. A cult is typically, it's very usually small. Like you're lucky to get a couple hundred people.
Yeah. Right.
That's hard to get those people to all agree, to all do the same thing. Bill Gothard weaponized traveling around, getting all of his stuff out into all of these different families all over the world, and then had them subscribe to a thing where they had to pay money every year to keep getting his good stuff. Yeah. And then they would go and get other families. Like, you should join this. This is great. It is multi-level marketing cult.
Yeah.
Here he is admitting that IBLP is not what he defines as a traditional cult, but he claims it is a multi-level marketing cult. How so? Multi-level marketing is based on the concept that you recruit others and gain benefit from their sales. In other words, as you recruit people to the group, you have more and more people under you, and they recruit people and have more and more people under them. You're supposed to gain some kind of benefit from all those you recruit and those they recruit. There is no such thing within the IBLP organization at all. Nothing like it in the programs they sponsored either. There was no benefit to you personally whatsoever by inviting someone to a seminar, to participate in the youth programs, or to joining the homeschool program. So what kind of multi-level marketing thing is he referring to exactly? This is just not true at all, and he doesn't even really make an argument for this claim. He just states it, and then they suggest by inviting others to participate, that shows they are a multi-level marketing cult. This is grasping at straws, really. The truth is, he can see IBLP is not a cult, but wants desperately to justify continuing to call it one, like the others in his group do. The truth is, I have a bit of respect for Bryce. Mr. Brandon Rice is his real name, I think, and he is the one who made this claim. I actually think he wants to do the right thing, but has been disillusioned and disappointed in several ways and blames it on IBLP. This disappointment got him into interacting with others who were unhappy about their upbringing, and this has caused harm to his family relationships as well. Of course, the internet connects people in ways that never would have been in the past, and by doing so, solidifies and ramps up the complaints by association. But I actually wouldn't mind having a real deep sit-down conversation with Bryce. I think he really wants to be more honest and is more open to true arguments than he lets on. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe. I hope to see you here next time.